Morning everybody, and how are you today? It's a beautiful day, absolutely lovely. Day 3 of my 30-day challenge. Hope I'm coming over loud and clear. Gives a shout out if you're on here, if anybody's on here. Sometimes I think, who cares? Yeah, day 3, whatever. Day 3, it seems like day 30. And this is another lesson I've learned. Because welcome to the world of a perfectionist. A person that has to have it right before he starts. That's not always a good thing, but sometimes it's a brilliant thing. Because everybody knows I'm quite risk adverse. So I make sure I know the answer before I start the journey. Yeah, so what have I learned out of that is, well, perfectionist, your mind races constantly all the time. Coming up with different scenarios. Coming up with different ideas about what you could do and how you could do it. I think it's just a case you've got to accept it. That's just how you're wired. So if you're like that, don't worry. You're normal. Welcome to the club in the world. You are normal if you think about things constantly all the time. But you've got to understand that only one thing could actually happen. So why do you constantly need to think about the same thing all the time? Really, that's what it comes down to. Or go over different scenarios all the time and get worried and annoyed. One of the best books I ever read was How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. I think it was Dale Carnegie, possibly. It was fantastic. But the key out of that is, why worry about all the different scenarios it could happen if only one thing can happen on the day? Don't get bent out of shape about it. Anyway, back to my investment strategies. My life lessons of what I've learned so far. So, this property I bought probably about over 20 years ago actually. When I bought it, I got it for a good price at that time. Yeah, good price, paid a good price for it, that's fine. 8 years later I sold it for 3 times the price. And that's no boasting, paid a lot of tax on it. Hey ho, that's what you do when you make money. So paid a lot of tax on it, but also I probably made about 38,000 in rental income out of it as well over that period. So it was a good investment. At the time I never knew I was going to do that. But I think the key about selling, I could have waited, I could have got higher, but that property today, 20 years on, hi Jimmy, hi James, that property today, 20 years on, is worth half the price what I sold it for all these years ago. What have I learnt out of that? Warren Buffett, I think it actually says it in investing. He says, don't try to predict the peak. You exit the market when you think it's comfortable and it's the right return for you. That's the only reason. I see it so many times actually when people go to sell their house and they get the first offer in and the offer's fantastic and it blows my mind. And I'm saying, no, maybe you should, probably I would seriously consider taking that. And then it's like, no, it's only the first offer. It's like, no, I'm going to wait. And I'm like, oh, no, didn't wait, please. I know it's a good offer. Please take my advice. Remember, it's the buyer that's been out there so long. It's not the fact that your property's been on the market for 2 days. It's because the buyer's been out there. So the buyer will disappear. That's a lesson for selling. But we're not talking about selling. So that property. But what did I learn out of it? In that time, we actually, hi Jill, in that time we actually had a fire, an electrical fire actually. It started in the kitchen from the fridge freezer. Gutted the place completely, smoke damage all the way through. Luckily everybody got out, it was during the day so we were quite lucky. The whole place was gutted. The one thing I did learn out of that, hi Derek, hi Max, hi Gavin. One thing I did learn out of that is make sure you've got the right insurance cover. It's risk, it's avoiding risk. One thing I learned in industry when I was working as a financial controller, financial director, my bosses used to say to me, Jim, remove the risk from everything. Always look at the downside and minimise that as much as possible. So the key I've learned out of that is when we had the fire, is you have to have the right insurer. The insurer was Hamilton Fraser actually, or it could have been Alan Boswell, two of the best insurers for landlords by the way. These policies cover everything, and I mean everything. And I'll tell you a wee story about what happened to one of my other landlords because he wouldn't take my advice. And they just walked in and said, no bother, the loss adjuster says that's fine, just get a quote for everything, we'll get it sorted out, we'll pay for everything, we'll pay for your loss of rent. It's like, well, I could sit and leave this house empty for the next 3 months. Yeah. If you're still doing your due diligence, getting your quotes and everything like that, we could do all that. All right, perfect. So it's making sure you've got the right insurance cover for property investment and minimising your downside. I think that's the most important thing. One of the stories I remember was one of my landlords actually came to me. Sadly, he's no longer here. Absolutely fantastic guy, yeah? And I more or less pleaded with him. I says, look, make sure you've got the right cover for your property. Make sure you're covered. This is the policy I recommend. It was Alan Boswell, yep, Alan Boswell Insurance. And I still use Alan Boswell today, brilliant. I've got a ongoing situation just now. Alan Boswell's covered it for the last 2 years. Wow. They've been absolutely brand new about it. But he insisted, no, National Farmers Union. I want to use the National Farmers Union. I've always used them, I always trust them. And yeah, I get it completely. I says, but are you covered for this, that and this? And at the time he said, aye, no bother, I'm covered for it. I went, okay, that's fine. Make sure you're covered for that. And lo and behold, something happened and it was out with his control. It was the winter of discontent. It wasn't that winter, 1979. It was the time that we all got snowed in and nobody was coming out for anything. And that was probably about 6 years ago. And what had happened was that upstairs had gone away back home, because we're only here temporarily, so we're going to be back home for Christmas. And their pipe burst upstairs and the water flooded into this property from upstairs and all over the place. And even Scottish Water says, well, we can't even get out to close the water off because we can't even get out. Okay, so for the next day or two, it was actually in the papers, next day or two, this place was all flooded. It was about £25,000 worth of damage. So the loss adjuster walked in the door and the first thing he says, and we didn't know because what had happened was the person had a job. Unfortunately, they'd fallen in hard times. They'd had to claim housing benefit. We weren't aware of this. It's not your obligation to be aware of that. They don't need to tell you. It's their relationship with the government and the council, whether they claim housing benefit or not. And we found out the tenant was on housing benefit and they went, you're no covered for that. Wow, £25,000 because he had the wrong insurer. Even despite the fact I said that. And he wasn't, and it took him, and he successfully argued the case, but it took him 2 years to argue the case that there's nothing in your terms and conditions that actually say that, because at that time it was called local housing allowance. So they argued, well, this person isn't a housing benefit tenant, they're a local housing allowance tenant. So therefore you don't actually have that in your terms and conditions. And successfully argued, but could have avoided all that trouble with getting the right insurance. I think really that was the most important thing, the lessons I've learned out of that. Yeah, so I think, yeah, that's probably my lesson for today. So maybe just wrap it up there. And I'll probably tell you later on why I'm doing this every single day. Maybe tell you tomorrow or the next day. Because you'll be thinking, why is this guy giving all his secrets? Why is he telling everybody everything for nothing? You don't get anything for nothing. But there's a reason behind it. Big reason. And I'll share that with you one day. Okay, bye for now. See you later, guys. Stay safe. Stay home. That's the message still. But most of all, stay safe. Bye for now.